There goes my teensy. My date. Teensy. It's a date. It's a day walking. Teensy. Wait, one was that too? Oh, dude, what's that? Teensy off the cliff and dead. A dead Teensy. It's a dead Teensy. You number 2. How you got number 2? You're number 2 in it. On the top 10. I don't know which one on this one. Let's see. Yeah, cause it's about to change. on this one, you just on the other one. Somebody's name is Ryan Creepy. Or you was in first place and the other guy took it. Do you know the person that took your first place or you don't know him? You know that person that's in first or you don't know that person? Well, it's a guy number one, it's a guy. I don't know how much awesomeness he has. I want to look and see. Oh, he's like 11 awesomeness. Wait, he from the same country as you? Or he from a different country? Yeah, he's from a different country. I wonder what country he's from. There's one person from Canada. I got a person from Canada. The guy that's number 5 he's from Canada. Cause he got the little Canada icon next to his name. They got 2 people from Canada. The 3rd and the 5th one is from Canada. Both are from Canada, the 3rd and the 5th. Or you know all the people that's on the leaderboard? Or you just know some of them? The challenge is over. Come back for one movie. Get as many of them as quick as possible. You think I paid $50, you're gonna get down and let them get the down. Cause I'll do that, I'll be paying attention. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to get the name. somebody already got silver. One of my friends got silver already. This person already got silver. Those are my friends. I ain't got silver so quick and the challenge just started. Hey, that's my friend got the silver. Unless, oh, but he gonna be on a different time than I am. So it probably started somewhere in space and time. I don't know who's on the top 10 on this one. I'm seeing now. I want to see. Yep, and I accidentally jumped through. My God, my friend. My friend is he got gold. So that's my friend that got gold. That's a friend. When if the other one started yet. Look at the other one started too. No, it didn't start. It started in 2 minutes.
What's happening, everyone? It's Abdallah here with another exciting Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tips and tricks tutorial video. Today's video is showcasing all of the shortcuts that you need to know for the Golden Dash Cup and the Lucky Dash Cup. We're going to detail them step by step so that you guys can beat all your buddies in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Let's jump into it. Let's kick off the tutorial with our first level called Paris Promenade. Now, this level is from Mario Kart Tour and it has a lot of different pathways in it. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe made the pathways pretty static, but they fixed them up with all the different laps. Our very first shortcut is going to be exclusive to the very first lap, where as you can see there's two front plan cutouts. You can have a mushroom right over here at this point. Typically in time trials, you can see blast right through there. Likewise, on the second lap, you can do the exact same thing as long as you have enough speed to break through those piranhas. And on the final lap right over here, it's going to be the exact same. Use a boost or simply put, blast your way right through. Next up is going to be Toad Circuit. Now this is a faithful representation of the 3DS version that we've all come to love. There's not too much going on here, but there are three shortcuts that you are going to want to know. The first one is going to be right at the beginning. Now you can use this on any lap. This one's going to be a grass cut that will definitely help you cut in front of the competition. Right over here you'll see that to the right there's going to be a lot of grass and off-road. You can use one or two mushrooms in order to cut off that big chunk of area. Next up over here is a pretty obvious one that it's hard to miss. All you have to do is head on over here with the mushroom and jump on that sand ramp. Now, very easy to do in 200cc without a mushroom. The last but not least is going to be the sand pipes over this way. Use a mushroom in order to blast through there. Of course, you can do it a lot cleaner, like this time trial run over here, where they had an ultra mini turbo to let off at the end. Next up over here is Chocolate Mountain. Now this is going to be the Mario Kart Tour version of Chocolate Mountain. That's not necessarily the N64 that you've come to know, but that's alright. There's going to be three slightly off-road shortcuts for level. Super easy, just take a look right over here. Now, the level stays pretty true to the Mario Kart Tour version. All you have to do is pay attention to these little turns over here, grab a couple points if you want to, and then mini turns your way the mountain. Once you're over here to the left side, there's going to be an off-road section right here that you can use one mushroom. There's another little off-road section here that you can use the second mushroom. And you can have a mushroom towards the end of the entire lap. I like to use this clutch off-road simply because it can make or break how well you place in a lap. So take a look right over here by the railing. It's on the right side. All you have to do is cut off that little portion over there, let your mini turbo go, and do some tricks while you pass the finish line. Next up is going to be a fan favorite, which is the level Coconut Mall for Nintendo Wii. Now, unfortunately, there's not too many shortcuts in this level. There's a lot of tricks that you can do off of all sorts of different ramps and escalators and whatnot, but there's really only one shortcut, and that's going to be at the very beginning. You're going to need some speed in order to go through it because it's considered off-road, even though it's made out of wood flooring. Anyway, do some tricks off the stairs over here. You can do your trick right off of the escalator, and then head over to the right with this shop, use a mushroom, trick your way off, and you are good to go with that one. That's all you got for Coconut Mall. Next up, over here in the Lucky Cat Cup is going to be Tokyo Blur. This one's from Mario Kart Tour, and just like Paris Promenade, there's many different winding paths that they've combined into one level in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, this one's only going to have two different shortcuts, which use the exact same ramp on two different laps. So anyway, once you're over here on the first lap, pay attention to your surroundings over here. You'll notice that there's a winding path that really stops you from going through. So just follow the arrows and you'll be all set to go. It's not like it's random, it's set every single time. So the first lap is this specific pathway. Now, you'll see to the right over here that there is a little ramp. You can use a mushroom to fly through that mini turbo as soon as you land. Likewise, that same ramp is going to be available on lap 2 to do the exact same thing. And if you're running 200cc, you can easily use this shortcut without any mushrooms. Super simple. Alright, next up, we have the Nintendo DS. So this level is a little bit more tricky because you have to dodge cars in some way. So it's a lot like Toad's Turnpike. Just make sure that you're hugging as close to the walls as physically possible, using your mini turbo and your brake while you're holding your turn support. Right over here at this turn, you'll be able to release and hold your mini turbo, and then start veering over to the left. You'll be able to use a mushroom right over here to cut off that grass and head on over to that glider. So that's our shortcut. Right over here is going to be a leap of faith propeller, and if you're not paying attention to this little area here, you will absolutely miss it. So use a shroom, fly right over there, and you can trim up that propeller and give yourself a boost. Next up is going to be Sky Garden from Game Boy Advance. Wow, this level is actually really fun, and I've got some fun things that I want to show you inside here. Simply because the graphics are amazing. There's a really, really clutch shortcut at the very end, which you can see right over here in the flyby, and there's a little bit of creativity involved with this one. But anyway, there's going to be 3 shortcuts, and the very first one is going to be the leaf hop. Kind of like the previous Cloud Top Cruise level, you'll be able to see over here that there are leaves. Now, if you're able to trick off of every single one of them, you will 100% be faster than if you didn't. If you take a look over here at the time trial version of the world record, he goes really, really fast with that. Next up is going to be the flower trim. This is simply holding a mini turbo and then boosting all the way through that. This one right over here is going to be Desperate Cloud Cut, simply because I was just messing around and I kind of did a shortcut there. And last but not least is going to be the Beanstalk Donut Cut. Very, very similar to the other donut cut in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So it's very clutch. You'll be able to win by doing that. Last on our list is Ninja Hideaway from Mario Kart Tour. Now, there's a lot of winding paths over here, so it's confusing to the casual racer, but I assure you, there are 2 fun little shortcuts that you can take. One of them is a really easy trick shortcut, and another one can be used with a mushroom or even a shell, an item that can break through stuff. Anyway, right up the bat over here, the first shortcut is the Use Here On. Now, that's going to be on the right-hand side of the area. Simply put, do a trick right off that, moving around. Now continuing on over here, you're on the first floor and just there are spikes. One have to always use a mushroom right into these cutouts like you've seen in Paris Promenade. And likewise, you can use a turtle shell. Well, there you have it, all the shortcuts that you need to know about the first 2 cups within Mario Kart 8 DLC. Now, of course, if you guys are looking to take your Mario Kart game a step further, look no further than the other video that I put out showcasing every single one of the records for all of these levels. Now, there's a lot of information on there, so make sure you guys do it. If this video helped you out, be sure to smash that like button and share the video with a friend that may need some help with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Save big on the new Samsung Galaxy S22 series. Now available on Google Fi.
Area, because at the end you're going to want to
really quick disclaimers. I don't hate these movies or shows.
last
Netflix shows like Squid Game and Hellbound taught us not to sleep on Korean television, especially the dark stuff. That's why we were all so excited to sink our teeth into All of Us Are Dead. No one is their best self during high school. Or a zombie apocalypse, one when people start showing their true colors, some are more flattering than others. Hi, I'm keeping up secret wicked binge, and this is Sophia Sana High from Before we start ranking, we need to lay down just a couple of ground rules. For this lesson, we'll be breaking the students up into three tiers: the good, the gray, and the bad. Of course, we'll be focusing on their pre-zombie actions more quickly, though you'll see a few notable exceptions. This should go without saying, there is a huge spoiler warning effect, so carry on at your own risk. First up, we have the good tier. This is filled with characters who show outstanding moral fortitude in the face of, well, zombies. Winning the gold medal of good is class president Namra. She's top of the class, so it should be no surprise that she studied hard enough to come in top of our list as well. Namra is not a flawless character by any means, but we think she makes exceptional strides toward overcoming her weaknesses on the show. When it starts out, she's antisocial, self-involved, and preoccupied with little more than meeting her mother's absurd expectations. She doesn't offer to help out or seem concerned, even as the world begins crumbling around her. It's not just that she's shy either. When Soo-hyuk tries to engage her in conversation, she is just as resistant to socializing. She also seems to harbor some bitterness toward the other students for not treating her as a true class president, despite her not making the effort to engage with them and admitting readily that her mother paid for her spot there. Now, by the end of the show, she's brought the survivors closer together. She opens up about why she was afraid to make friends, and learns to accept each and every person stranded on the road. This is all an impressive amount of growth for a few days' time. We're saving the best for last. Whereas most students turn into monsters after being infected with the Jonas virus, Namra falls just short of being a superhero. She uses her half-beam powers for good to let her friends know that her resolves on the weakest and easiest to evade. She also uses her strength to fight off the odds, getting her attack. All of this happens while she is struggling and having to fight the urge to eat all of her tasty classmates. While the decision to stay in Soo-hyuk might be mostly about her own self-preservation, she uses that time to care for the rest of the zombies who could compromise society. The silver medal goes to Soo-hyuk. There are a few small complaints to make about Soo-hyuk, one being his childless and his feelings. However, we think that he does a great job of playing the hero without ever crossing over into the asshole genre stereotype. As a matter of fact, he's often the one defending someone that the rest of the group sees as a liability. He never will accept praise or take risk for the group and goes above and beyond for his crush, Namra, even once she's been dead. Though we know he was taken out of the bars running the school, he makes it clear to no one behind him. He even stands up to his former friends when he sees them continuing to be the danger they're in. Meltdowns along the way. However, Onjo ends up becoming exactly the kind of person you want to have around in a zombie-related emergency. She's decisive, caring, and knows what to do in a crisis. While she doesn't have Namra's book smarts, she proves herself to be a good leader. Her biggest downfall as a survivalist is how hard she takes the deaths of her friends and family. While it does put the team at greater risk on a couple of occasions, they can still survive from a moral perspective. Perhaps enough to earn her some votes. It shows she cares. Following her is Chong-sung. It's hard to not give points for being a teenage boy. There are obviously times when he doesn't know how to handle his feelings, but feelings are weird. As a result, he comes as uncaring and cruel. You can forgive him for all that, but you can't forgive the pettiness that this starts between him and Soo-hyuk. Whether it's cowardice or jealousy that compels him to leave his friend behind, you may never know. But that's such a mature way, leaving Anjo with a proper goodbye, says a lot about how much he's grown as a character. Next is Daesu. Daesu is such a wholesome member of the group. To cast him solely in the role of comic relief would be to do him a disservice, but it's hard to deny that he's often the most lighthearted of his friends. Whether it's suggesting out the window or singing a song to the stairs, smiles on the show trace back to Daesu. All this, he's still brave. He's never afraid nor reluctant to put his strength to the test in order to protect his friends. Speaking of people who are just comfortable, the next star of the show, he is an unsung hero of the show. This member of the archery team is not only a good shot, but he's loyal. When his friend comes on a mission to save her brother, he accompanies her without second-guessing her at every turn. He shows his constant trust in her and does his best to make sure that the people with them will survive. Next up is Suk. They have given a long brief to the zombies to save them. For this sacrifice alone, you just let him put him in the good tier. Following him is Chun-Young. He makes the good tier for an act of self-sacrifice as well, albeit more begrudgingly. Though he blends into the woodwork more than his peers for being quiet and reflective, we've also seen he's willing to take an active role in their survival. When the time does come for him to sacrifice himself, he doesn't really hesitate. Rounding out the tier is the show's coolest character, Jing Hadi. While going back for a family may be a common theme in the show, it's something we still believe Hadi should get credit for. She's also able to save a few of her peers from she doesn't always seem to care they say, but that's part of what makes her so effective at what she does. We get to see the soul side develop too, and by the end of the show, she's learned how to comfort members of the group who are experiencing loss, even when they're near struggling. We move on now to the Great Tier. These are characters whose values are stronger in favor of survival, but didn't entirely fall into a gravity. First there is this secretly pregnant teenager gives birth on the day that the zombie apocalypse hits. She can't even get help from the nurse because the virus takes immediate priority. We'll entirely blame her. Seems to be a child is where the show has a system in place to help her take care of the baby, and she did try to do something where it could be family care for, in all likelihood find someone equipped to deal with it. The plan was selfish and heartbreaking, but we understand where she was coming from. What keeps her from being a bad person, of course, is that she goes back to pick up the baby when she realizes that the zombies are coming. Once she gets bit, she also takes measures to protect the baby from herself as well. Following her is Hyo-Ryo. We're now...
My wife is not well. It happens after dark.
Your roommate just took up percussion. You need a job that gets you out of here.
I need it, dude.
Indeed you do.
Now moving into characters that, despite having a decent amount of screen time, were morally ambiguous. They didn't make big sacrifices for their peers, but they also didn't make terrible mistakes. This is perhaps best exemplified by Hyo-Ryo. We think her biggest downfall is when she admits to distrusting Daesu about his life. She's not wrong to distrust him, and does her best to express that flaw within herself. We feel cause for us issues during this life journey they undergo together. Next is tied up by Isak and Yosu. Both of these characters play similar roles in the show, supporting their friends. Yosu may have been more active in the group survival, but Isak was shown to be poorly successful on occasion. In both instances, their deaths hit forward for the rest of the entity would without their impact. But this was felt more in their absence. We wish they had been given the same opportunities to develop and do good with the other survivors. We move now to Wu-Jin. He was kind, unobstructive, and helpful. Though we think he could have been more grateful to his sister and her friends for coming to save him, there is little to complain about with his character overall. At the end of the day, he did his best. Despite only making the Gray Tier, we still have to feel like his best was plenty adequate. Speaking of his sister's friends, next up is Mi-Jin. She's very fun to watch, but probably not your first choice of companion in an emergency. Aside from being rough around the edges, she has very skewed priorities. Though she is more than willing to complain about test taking at every available opportunity, her defining character trait seems to be a desire to go to college and getting a smoke. Still, she proves to be a good friend to the extent of even telling tall tales to boost boost Hadi's confidence. She also has an endearing way of crudely speaking truths and looking at the bright side of every morbid situation. Rounding out this tier, we have Ji Min. This girl has some trust issues. After the time she's had, we don't exactly blame her. Still, it paints her in a less than positive light compared to some of her classmates who do more to overcome their fears. Ji Min is the last and least accepting of Namra, even when her half-E powers prove useful. She also ends up separated from the group because she chooses to flee rather than return for a fallen friend. Keeping this in mind, we had to rank her below her classmates, even if her shortcomings seem warranted given the situation. And finally, we reach the bad to evil tier. These are the characters whose villainous actions had us reeling, and that's before they were zombified. Kicking off this tier, we have Yun-Ji. We're a little surprised that this didn't turn into a full-blown revenge subplot with Yun-Ji. She is the victim of merciless bullying while alive. She actually gets bit trying to destroy the phone of her bully so that a naked video of her isn't uploaded to the internet. At that point, Yun-Ji is already contemplating suicide. It would have been a quick painless death had she fallen from and jumped. She decided instead to try and spare her mother the pain of seeing her abused at school. It shows that even though she's not one herself, she's still a victim of evil in life she cares about, and the stakes should be laid for it. We're sort of surprised that after she turns and is to show her true mental capacities, that she didn't want to see other people defend her. It's not to say that she doesn't get any revenge. The first victim she blamed is a faculty member who blamed her when she tried to get help. Honestly, it was sort of nice to see her step into a position of power, and the show definitely missed an opportunity by not letting us get rid of Zombi's anti-hero content. Her worst action is not the murder of setting fire to the school. Since that fire did less damage to the school than everything else going on inside, we were tempted to give her a pass on that too. Following her is fellow victim Chol-Soo. Yun-Ji accuses Chol-Soo of not having the courage to live or die. That's why we were so shocked when he found the courage to leave his classmates for dead inside the school during his own rescue. We know that he probably did this to honor Yun-Ji's wishes to see the whole school burn, but it was dark. It was one of the most surprising acts of cruelty in the show, and the injustice of Chol-Soo getting rescued after locking the others in the building physically hurt to watch. After him is Kim Hyung-ju. It's actually easy to miss just how cruel Hyung-ju can be. Almost immediately in the show, we're tricked into seeing her as a victim because she's being held captive by Mr. Lee. But before she's patient zero, she's a friend of the gang of bullies. She's on the roof when Jin-Soo turns, and is more concerned about his beating splashing water on her than she is about the fact that he's being beaten. That's pretty cold. But of course, even worse are the bullies themselves. First up is Cheng-Hu. He's evil by association, though he takes the least active role in actually harming his fellow students. We see him laugh at the torment inflicted by his friends. Based on his attitude and the company he keeps, we feel justified putting him this low. Taking the bronze medal of evil is his leader, Myung-Hwan. Myung-Hwan is the head of the bullies in the show. He's the one we see actually giving the orders in the group. It's under his reign that Mr. Lee's son tries to commit suicide, and he still seems to be in control when we're watching the worst of the abuse come to Chol-Soo and Yun-Ji. While he's not in the show a lot, his cruelty sets up the system of abuse that serves as a big chunk of the story's dark foundation. We hate to say it, but it was sort of satisfying to watch him get bullied to death by zombies. Taking the silver medal of evil is Na-Young. This girl is a piece of work. Even before we bring the life or death aspect of her situation into play, Na-Young is she's classist, she's rude, she's toxic, and she's literally the worst in everyone. We hear of her spreading rumors before we ever get to meet her. When she's properly introduced to us, it's by her berating another student. Every unit comes into the survival portion of the show, she brazenly calls him a wealthy. This is an offensive term used to describe someone on welfare, and it proves just how low she's willing to hit. This is ruthless. And of course, that fact that she murders him. It's one thing to kill a classmate when you turn to a zombie, yes, but it's another thing entirely to intentionally turn them into zombies so that you don't have to deal with them anymore. She tries to play the victim, using this arm to rescue her through self-sacrifice. Even when she knows her fellow classmates are starving and succumbing to dehydration in the room just next to her, she locks them out of the supply closet rather than help them out. We have to say, say, in her defense, that she does eventually die trying to make amends, but even if the attempts to bring them food had worked, we're not sure that it would have made things right. Finally, the gold medal of evil goes to Queen Nam. No surprise here, our king of the bullies and zombies alike takes the win. We've talked a lot about the problems that the bullies in the school cause. Queen Nam was personally responsible for a lot of that, and indirectly responsible for the rest. He is the one ready to post a nude video of Yunji before the zombies take over, ruining everyone's lives. When he becomes a half-beat, his first move is to mobilize what he considers to be his zombie army to go after Chongsan. And why does he want Chongsan specifically? Well, because he witnessed Queen Nam murdering the principal. The fact that he's willing to punish someone for witnessing his own evils says a lot about his character, as does the fact that he's willing to rally a zombie army behind himself. In the final showdown between him and Chongsan, he even admits that killing him isn't as much fun as he thought it would be, but he'll still stop at nothing to make it happen. That's been it. Our list of All of Us Are Dead students ranked from good to evil. Who did you think was the best? The worst? Well, let us know in the comments below, as well as what other topics you'd like to see us cover. While you're down there, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, stay wicked.
Korean zombie media is still producing absolute bangers. Enough so that it took me out of my couple-month break because I had to cover this one. Yes, I'm playing supposed to but with the zombie outbreak that really ramped up the danger factor, it was time to do a white rooms about a story from activity. Well, zombies, I know, like different used to. Today, we discussed a high school administrative on when an internal organization decides to resort to biological warfare. A series with characters that need so many vaccinations, I wonder if they are related or mixed. When your body is forced by these crispies, this all started because cancer gangs a show that concepts that the virus to drink water don't go to school to worms. When you're not dead but not alive but are completely hangry. And the smells like Teen Spirit show itself. Today, we are telling you why you wouldn't survive All of Us Are Dead's Jonas Virus Zombie Apocalypse. Originating from the mind of Dr. Lee Byung-chan, a brilliant academic that acquired a PhD in cell biology, worked as a researcher for a U.S. pharmaceutical company before quitting to become a high school science teacher. Sounds a bit familiar, huh? After his son, self-inflicted alive, the situation is the school's problem of making this world bad. Dr. Lee was supposed to protect his son and wanted to like that. Son, Dr. Lee wanted to find a way for the son science. The high school science teacher raised his to baptize the cats. His MO was to alter man to not be crippled by fear, by unleashing basic inner instincts that society deemed so unlike modern man to muster and unleash rage to give the fearful few a fighting chance. To basically evolve humanity so that the powerless can fight back against the powerful, which is a strong theme within the series' narrative. Due to this particular mouse's heightened testosterone levels, Dr. Lee extracted a certain hormone within it and refined it into a serum, hoping to basically convert the fear response, the fight or flight response, within the amygdala so that his son and humanity in general would eventually never fear again, and tackled their fears head on with blind determination, but more so than anything, rage. However, it's because of this focus on fear within the brain that an infected host will fight like hell to survive because of the fear they display and how they feel that he would use this on his own son and find terrifying results. He soon referred to this as the Jonas virus, named after Hans Jonas, a German-American philosopher that emphasized the responsibilities of modern science in relation to life. A principle of his beliefs was the heuristic of fear, with heuristic basically meaning a mental shortcut to allow a person to reach a conclusion quickly, with heuristic of fear defining fear as a guide to responsibility that drives virtues of one man, and that fear is a determining factor that drives one, especially as it has technology become crippled by. Heuristics are natural things to make, and as life needs to make quick decisions in order to operate and survive. Dr. Lee found inspiration in Hans Jonas' technique that focused on fear and airlines were much refused to extinguish and utilize fear in a way that would evolve. Later on, military scientists described the virus as one of no real origin, while coming up with the conclusion there was no virus that could be more connection to rabies. This was so bad. All RNA come up different. Showing the virus mutates rapidly, so rapidly in fact, that creating a vaccine or countermeasure for it is nigh impossible. Even its creator said the only cure for it is just to outright kill the host that is harboring it and then burn the body to prevent its spread in any way. Fire was the cure. Dr. Lee basically just took this ideology of the heuristic of fear into an extremist way, creating a viral disease that relied on fear swiftly becoming hostile anger. These results would create something reminiscent of Zombies to 28 Days Later and Train to Busan, with an evolution beyond them known as Hambies we'll discuss later. But any suggestion that quelling this outbreak and further info would die along with Dr. Lee, as he eventually sacrifices himself, regretting what he had unleashed upon the world. In this
With the Sapphire Preferred card, earn 5 times total points on travel purchase through Chase.
Like to visit Grandma?
Grandma babysits, then you get 3 times points on dining. On all this, again. Your safe getaways are more rewarding. Chase, make more of what's yours. Sometimes.
a scenario, though, there's not going to be something that goes everywhere that will assume the worst and say it's like quickly with no known origin in its own. So, what is this virus? Well, Dr. Lee described the simple process after introduction to the body as every cell striving to survive or immune, and the body's strongest cells between the two cells leading to a litany of horrific symptoms, most notably causing the heart to completely stop, the flesh to function through the process, but the brainstem to activate, much like the Walking Dead virus, kind of like Rayman, and is seemingly spreading exclusively to members of the rodents. With the fluids, any vital person or drop of blood or saliva, basically any bodily fluid that gets into an orifice of yours, can mean quick, indefinite transmission, even with blood that has laid on a surface like a rag for a while that touches an open wound. The turn rate is up to or around 24 hours if either bitten by a small enough mammal while also being given medication to slow the symptoms like benzodiazepine. But in most cases, like 99.95% of cases, the turn rate can and will be between 30 seconds to 5 minutes. Not long after exposure to the Jonas virus through saliva or blood will symptoms, most of the time, almost immediately start to arise as they turn. A small but noticeable nosebleed along with dizziness, fatigue, vision becoming red and blurry, and muffled hearing will occur. Their odor is often also also described as that of a rotting corpse. In some cases, afflicted individuals will start to say how much they want to kill anyone out of their overridden fear, now being completely replaced with the aforementioned anger. The veins will darken sporadically throughout the body and often cause profuse bleeding from the eyes, nose, and mouth, and in some cases, as the gums begin to puff up with flesh bubbling up in some areas, and the teeth to become more able to bite others. While this occurs, bodily temperature will drastically decrease as low as 29.1 degrees Celsius, or, if you're an American, 84.3 degrees Fahrenheit. The victim's body will seize up as muscles completely stiffen, as the sound of snapping of bones and cartilage can be heard with each sudden and stilted movement, as if afflicted by rigor mortis. Much like
Train to Busan, the movie. Oh my god, man, you watching this dub, bro?
Usually, very soon after these breakdowns, will they fully convert into a mindless zombie. Much like those of the rage virus, do victims display heightened levels of aggression, anger, and temperament. The body can sometimes contort to excessive levels of distortion. From this point on, their bodies will say that the brain is infected and for some reason still functioning in a very disjointed and manner. But it's possible to exist as it's functional for some affected individuals. In this situation, are they able to hold out just a little bit longer? As they start to perceive everyone else as dead threats to their survival, as seen beyond soon. After all, nature sunk everyone is running approaches zombies to laugh at. He was obligated to fight back against these evil people. This may explain why people in a massive outbreak in a populated area will tend to turn so quickly. Since the Jonas virus enters the gray matter looking to prey upon one's fears, infecting people already in a panic would mean a swift and easy turn rate most of the time. From then on, whether they turn in seconds or in minutes, will they become mindless killing machines with one goal: infection. These zombies will attack recklessly in a veritable straight line to the point where they will run off buildings and straight into walls, marking no sense of self-preservation as they are overwhelmed with feral rage and hunger, even to the point where they will full force tackle prey through windows, although most, if not all, will survive falls from great heights to continue hunting. This primal mental state will cause them to lose most of their motor skills, preventing them from opening doors, using tools and weapons, and more, with the majority of zombies being unable to scale vertical surfaces, climb up objects, and having to resort to getting down on all fours just to ascend a flight of stairs. Although sometimes they can maneuver themselves to jump/climb obstacles or other zombies to reach their target, but it seems to be in a minuscule portion of the zombie majority. They do retain strength equal to or slightly more than their healthier counterpart, and will use it to their full advantage, busting down doors and defenses with ease. But this reckless strategy comes at a cost of their intellect. They can also be easily distracted from just about any endeavor due to a heightened sense of hearing and smell, as any sound or shift in their sight, like a screaming person far away, or being thrown off someone, can have them switching their focus on the drop of a dime. Loud sounds from sources like helicopters or PA systems can have them all swarming to the visual and audio sources, most notably those reaching 24 hertz, meaning sudden sounds can have them all flock away and into particular locations. Familiar sounds and sights like an old friend whistling can take their full prerogative, as they can retain some of those suppressed memories from their former life. Much like a generic zombie, if they see a fellow zombie running after something else, they will blindly follow them in their pursuit, thinking the next meal is along the way. The bottom line is that they will often gather in hordes to congregate on anything that makes them think they can further their infection. Without something to target or actively hunt, they will meander around and wander aimlessly, much like any other zombie would. These zombies do have a voracious appetite and will actively hunt people to consume their flesh, unlike 28 Days Later Train to Busan zombies, being able to rip you open and tear out your insides just with their teeth and fingers. But this is because the virus looking to alter the mind to make it think like they want to eat, but it's mainly just to spread the infection. Dr. Lee even drew a parallel to Lucochloridium paradoxum, a parasitic virus that forces snails to ascend to the highest and most open points in order to be consumed and infect birds. Basically meaning the zombie is going to go out of its way to infect in any way possible, not keeping in mind its own safety. The zombie itself only has the goal of ensuring more infections will occur by its brutal things, no matter how senseless the cost. Much like the rodent fighting the cat, lending back to the Jonas virus having no self-preservation for the host body it is infecting. They are remarkably resilient. They can be stabbed all over, they can take hellacious amounts of blunt force trauma without faltering, and basically, like many other reanimated soldiers of the genre, must pretty much have either their head removed or their brains destroyed. Although an extremely sharp and deep blow to the neck seems to be an effective way to take them out, the consistencies when it comes to killing a zombie aren't really in the series, but this is what I can gather. They can have whole body parts amputated and even survive long falls to the ground that would pretty much splatter anyone and just get it back up after a little bit. And they can even forcefully snap their spines in two, which, I mean, if they're crippled in any way, it will slow their movement, but they will still be persistent in taking down anything they can lay their eyes on. However,
When your clients need you, Simple Practice is here to help. Whether it's sending secure messages, scheduling appointments, or taking notes, Simple Practice gives you the tools you need to provide exceptional care. And with HIPAA-compliant telehealth, you can support your clients from anywhere. A better experience for your clients means a better experience for you as an entrepreneur. With simplified billing, you can spend more time where it matters. Simple Practice, the preferred practice management software for practitioners. Click the button to learn more today. There are more ways to PayPal. There are more ways for me to break up purchases with Pay in 4.
There are more ways for people to deploy crypto.
another factor into the deadliness of this outbreak. Determining survival. Some people have the virus mutating them now, turning them into aliens. Even zombies. I have some. Which honestly sounds like something that they got zombies. They have a zombie. But this is what we refer to as evolution. Like the Jonas virus. Doctors say the virus and its aggressive behavior takes place transform mutate so that the bodies will not detect the virus, allowing it to, in a way, remain the mind. It would also seem this mutation occurs within people that have undergone continuous amounts of stress and more so anger for their death. The suicidal girl had felt abandoned by her love, and that she was about to be labeled a whore by social media, and that she angrily could trust no one before dying to a whore. The bully was beyond livid at Chong Sung for not being submissive, denying him of his dominance, and injuring him to the point that he lost a fight, pleading that he would kill Chong before being alive. And the original kid that was bullied was just bullied to the point that he just couldn't take anymore. So it's just extreme emotion that may be a factor into all of this, since it does affect the brain and the amygdala. So mental health could be a factor with the Jonas virus. But whether antibodies or extreme anger or emotions factor into this, mutations among the masses will occur in small pockets. These hammies will not instantly become stark-raving mad upon infection and dying, even if bitten all over the body. In fact, upon turning, they will show slight shock at themselves being basically brought back from the dead and ignored by other zombies. But this surprise usually fades, as the reasons for their anger before death will culminate in their mind, as all they can focus on is their point of animosity, while suddenly craving flesh and having a desire to eat the living, to the point where they feel like they are starving to death. They will try and satiate their hunger with other types of flesh, like zombies or fish, but for the most part, only warm flesh can suffice. Eating human flesh allows them to retain their humanity for as long as they are full. And like I said, they can eat zombie flesh to curb their hunger, but doing so would cause them to act completely like their zombie counterparts and become mindless, flesh-craving monsters, bringing a whole new meaning to lawless. what you eat. From then on, they will possess the ability to maneuver around hordes of undead basically unnoticed, even if they act like a normal, healthy human, leading to the conclusion that infected feral humans can detect the virus in other creatures and avoid attacking them simply by odor, as zombies are attracted to the scent of raw flesh, since zombies and hammies are said to smell like rotting corpses. Other symptoms of an infected will also remain, like rigor mortis-stricken joints snapping, but more than anything, they will fly into blind stints of rage, wanting nothing more than to kill non-infected people if they deem them a threat or a delicacy, and can spread the Jonas virus via their own blood and bites. They are also extremely resilient, bolstering expedited and remarkably fast regenerative capabilities to heal themselves quickly, with their bodies being torn apart by zombie hordes prior to infection, falling great heights, or being hit by full-speed buses that would splatter any regular person as their anatomy enters their broken bones, torn tissues, and ruptured blood vessels, eventually the enemy's body enough to function. And scars almost untouched. They will also develop greater strength, enough snapping these bones in half and punching and taking bones from the air as if they were impaled. Their hearing will also elevate, working the air even though they push, and the murmurs and threats of survivors far away and in other parts across the building. Although they will be debilitated by this very specific sense of sound, because the volumes of 24 hertz or higher infant and immense amounts of pain with even the sight of rain debilitated, as if large amounts of static are being projected into their brain. Their sense of smell will also be jacked up to 11, being able to smell the flesh of living beings like a shark attracted by blood in the ocean. They retain all knowledge of their prior life and the motor skills associated with it, allowing them to use weapons, open doors, climb surfaces, and more, a lot of which normal zombies can never achieve. But besides things normal humans can do, but as a self-healing bioweapon, they can even use hordes of the undead to their advantage by attracting their attention to hone in on a designated target, or even using their own infected bodily fluids to forcefully infect you or others to create more zombies or hammies to potentially with them, or just to kill you off, because all it takes is one bite and then they don't have to fight. Some hammies in some ways as they come to terms with what they are now, but because of their different nature, odor, demeanor, and cravings, many a man would fear their existence and either seek to kill these abominations or segregate, persecute, torture, and contain them, forcing many of these hammies to rebel and fight back to survive, get revenge at humanity, or possibly deeming themselves as superior life forms in their own heaven that will infect others to turn them into mindless drones for hammies to somewhat command or just push around because they're just mindless shells now. This new species of calculating and intelligent undead will be nearly indistinguishable from other humans, save for a few wounds, a lower temperature, and the body odor that makes you smell like a rotten corpse. They can use this visage to infiltrate areas and claim to be purely human and act all innocent, even if they commit crimes against nature, like devouring the flesh of a dead body or something. But if going unnoticed, they could effectively raid safe havens or infiltrate compounds, biting unsuspecting people or infecting them in efficient ways, like blood-soaked arrows and knives, or even using their blood to pollute drinking water, food, and medical supplies. That's something that really should have been discussed or used further. Imagine drinking water having their blood in it. And why do I bring that up too? Because testing, water testing, the body's testing their blood, medical testing in general will be inconsistent, as they will test both positive and negative. Testing for this disease will never be 100% randomly, allowing them to pass viral examination to be allowed entry into wherever they want to go. It is a 50-50 shot if it's going to pop up. Now, if these hammies are found out, it would take tons of gunfire and trauma to the body to take them down. But in most cases, they would be able to spread their infection and influence rather quickly. This will be the case for a large majority of hammies, as the overwhelming sense to kill others will remain prevalent in their minds, wishing to kill those that stand in their way, no matter how. Some, as stated before, will work in conjunction with living people, as they are still half human, and will help them, like going out to get them food, slip through hordes because the hordes won't do anything, and fight other hammies without risking infection and, more importantly, death, but this one relied on a stable mindset for the hammy after turning, and resisting the hellish urge of cannibalism all the while. Your only real chance of fighting them head-on is by having a hammy of your own, or being a hammy that can fight on equal footing, or if you have enough weaponry to really take them out. But more often than not, those that mutate will most likely end up becoming hostile to others and brutalizing them.
Looking to sell a ride? Sell happy with Acceleride. The easy way to sell your ride online. It's simple.
So, this all the Jones virus suddenly popping up and spreading like wildfire. Outbreaking chaos with exponential catastrophic university members as friends it's possible that concern with yourself. Rat got into a water supply, got into a drinking water, says the capability to spread wastewater. But once it has spread, you have to water, friends, not coming in terms of the scene. Once infected, unwillingly will draw close enough to be attacked and infected and killed. The ferocity of each infected once they are fully turned, and how quick most would turn, would efficiently wipe out a good chunk of the population fast, especially considering the fact that even if you are armed, most people know to aim for the head of a zombie. But remember here, some zombies can even survive being completely impaled through the skull or shot in the head. So, armed and unarmed people alike would fall quickly to this destructive, angry, bloody beasts. There is a lot that we're going against and a lot of inconsistencies of this disease that really kind of turn everything on its head. The bottom line is a lot of people are going to be getting infected. Emergency services would be fragmented and nigh useless as they struggle to help the first pockets of people calling for help. Eventually, electricity, comm towers, and more around them. Some of us may be evacuated to safe zones, but what happens to you within these zones can be highly up in the air as government and military officials try to pin down what this virus is and what it is capable of, meaning the potential infected could be executed on the spot, or possibly even all those in a pandemic outbreak radius being killed and having their bodies burned to quell the growth. It is also possible many refugees will be migrated and all confined to small spaces in quarantine with tons of other people in poor living conditions while desperate measures and a vaccine are made, which, again, as stated by Dr. Lee, is impossible, and the only real method of any kind of a cure is killing any and all potential hosts of the disease and cremating their corpses, possibly massive genocide by our soldiers, or even the medicine nowhere else to run. Well, you can try to break out of this quarantine before it comes out, which will most likely be gunned down and a mass execution by a criminal long-term life camp everywhere as riots having other plans for possibly soldiers, or one of these people in the camp can also carry a that can be safe zones as perfect starting points to spread another outbreak. Eventually, regardless, we'll all be thrust into the apocalypse to fend for ourselves without being rescued. We weren't already dead. At this point, it's best to be ones out there who are trusting others to have your back and not to shove you into harm's way to save themselves. Or you can be that very person sacrificing others to save your own ass. But keep in mind that doing so would not only have others quick to do the same to you in return, but also you'll eventually run out of human shields to throw at the horde and be all by yourself. Bottom line is, with the greater number of these kinds of zombies, the more you'll need to band together with others to make it. Trusting others and fortifying yourself with them is your best bet for your chances of survival. But trusting people could also burn you, since people in a lawless landscape will be unpredictable as their true natures will shine through in the darkness. More so, hambies could be working as sleeper agents, waiting to sink their teeth into you at any moment if the craving strikes, or they wish to have another zombie in their midst. However, it would also come down to your sheer willpower to not only persevere in daunting situations of survival and horror, but to know when mortality must be taken away. If you or someone else is bitten, you must come to terms with the fact that you or them must die soon, as to not risk the lives of anyone else. Do you have what it takes not to cover up a bite wound for fear of your own end? Do you have what it takes to kill someone you love or someone you've come to trust in a moment's notice? Would you be able to kill yourself as to not turn and have your repurposed body infect others? Would you or your loved ones even have time to come to terms with these facts? Or would you be so riddled with fear that the virus is able to take hold of your consciousness and turn you before you can even reason in either fashion? Can you retain your fears and insecurities long enough to do anything about it? Can you trust others not to be hambies that can switch alliances at any moment due to their own cravings? Do you believe yourself to be genetically and mentally unique enough to become a hamby and live through the turning process and gamble those odds with the people around you? And no, when it comes to the outbreak and its beginnings, you will not have a how to beat video to tell you how to beat them. You know, when it comes to how to beat stuff, and people say they can survive all the time, see of it like this. Yeah, the kid from Home Alone could stand a chance against Predator if given enough preparation and setup time. But with these scenarios, there is no prep, there's no watching in-depth videos on what to do about a specific situation a few days before it happens. It's not like you're cramming for a test you won't retain the knowledge of, and you've still got to set one on it. This, my friend, is happening to you at work, at school, or just shitting on toys. As it is for many other people, unless you specifically down combat or combat can make critically important decisions well, you're not going to be zombies heading to safety unless you're just hella lucky to be in the right place at the right time, or pretty much supplies, weapons, structures, and again, probably not you. Of course, busted the door right now. And then we also have to discuss firearms. Guns, depending on what country you're in, will either be a legendary drop or a common item. Either way, they will need to be utilized. You're gonna need a weapon because you're not taking down a zombie in a 1v1 fist fight where any bite or potentially scratch could infect you. It's not advisable even with proper protection. So suiting yourself up with duct tape on all major limbs, joints in your neck, or maybe sports gear and thick clothing are the most advisable advice you can take to prevent the deadliest outcome of being bitten. Utilizing all of a regular zombie's shortcomings like their lack of intelligence, oversensitive hearing, and tunnel vision will be crucial, making barricades to slow them down or even stop them in their tracks, as most can't learn how to climb over obstacles, making loud noises in far-off areas to keep them far away and distracted, luring them into pitfalls where they will fall into open holes and become trapped, and again, waiting for rain or other large sources of sound to easily sneak past or even periodically execute them over time. While they're distracted by rain, you can come up and stab them in the back of the head. But remember, unlike the show forgetting another key concept of its own virus, you're going to need to avoid getting any blood near any open orifice of yours, as a bloodied rag did in fact turn someone, even though it was on the rag for like 10 or 15 minutes. So it's safe to say any drop of blood or bodily fluids or saliva that enters your eye, an open wound, or your mouth could have you switching teams in moments. So add on extra eye, mouth, and generally just full body protection head to toe. You won't have to slaughter zombies, and blood will be flying. You are gonna have to come to terms with that. If you do not have the cojones to be able to slaughter someone, or, just deal with that, you're not gonna make it in this apocalypse. Now, say the outbreak is kept within a widely contained area like a city. You find yourself either escaping or being evacuated. Healthy and fearful people outside quarantine would want you to go back to where you came from or kill you, not wanting to risk you being a carrier that could possibly spread the infection further. Risk you being a carrier or even a hammy, if they know what that is, that could possibly spread the infection further. Some would deem those afflicted by the disease as possessed by the devil. Ooh. And this whole predicament as punishment from God. Militarized efforts may even have to resort to executing anyone within infected areas as targets to open fire on to ensure the disease stays contained while it is fully figured out. But our scenario, once again, is if it's somehow spread worldwide, possibly through water supplies or something more reminiscent of the bubonic plague that spread through rodents, insects, and dead bodies throughout Eurasia in the 1300s, killing millions, which, if rats and animals of that nature are contracting the virus and getting everywhere uncontrollably, it's very possible it can spread in a similar fashion, especially in apocalyptic scenarios where you can't really keep sanitation in a really good degree. You'll have to be in defenses that can withstand full bodies flinging themselves at your doors, walls, and windows constantly, while also making sure creatures of all sizes can't weasel their way in easily. These zombies are remarkably resistant to most forms of damage and can regenerate health in a matter of time, often forcing you into situations where dehydration, hunger, and exhaustion will surely take hold. As these regular zombies make a generic zombie apocalypse on steroid happen, remember, we had a mouse that was infected, so it's possible any mammal can be infected as well. So this could up the danger factor if they can infect many different types of mammals like dogs, rodents, cats, and if you think about it, if they reach a zoo and whatnot, we could see two gorillas, elephants, and more, all craving living flesh and hunting down the living while using their varying sizes and stature to either sneak into places or just purely break down walls with enhanced strength and enhanced hearing and smell. This can lead to an army that can tackle any situation, become the ultimate predators, stronger, more bloodless here, smarter, and their senses getting a lot higher with attained regenerative properties. There's a lot going on. Imagine it. With that said, though, animals, despite me stating that they could become hammies, isn't likely, as I would assume that hamification of the Jonas virus can only mutate within Homo sapiens. So realistically, the greatest threat of all will be, of course, the human hammies. They will begin to crop up in pockets across the world, as a large majority of them will most likely give in to their urges and fear, and will use their many biological disposal to attack others and satiate their voracious hunger. Their enhanced senses of smell and hearing will lend to them finding hiding individuals or small groups of survivors to convert them or just make them into a giant smorgasbord while gathering numbers to go through hideouts of survivors, safe havens, and coordinate attacks with other animals that will make it harder to survive. Futile and going and fighting regular zombies in this ferocity is enough to hit you or exhaust you. And what regular units with heightened strength and senses that use weapons and tools and have ways to destroy is a game changer. It can intentionally infect you from far away. There's a lot they are capable of doing to put you down for good, using their knowledge, powers, rates of infection, and more to break down enthralled defenses in a slow, periodic death of all kind. If you have a smart head, that's like strategy. Well, that is very useful. You don't need a way to get out of
Yeah, I saw that.
down in order to find safety.
Yeah, I saw one. Say you subscribe.
But if you're able to, survive on your own, you're still going to need a plan
My computer
to get
let
out
me know
of
when I
wherever
get
you
new
are
subscribers.
down in
It'll
order to find safety, food, and
say
water
you
eventually,
subscribe.
and maintain that for long periods of time. You'll most likely have to leave towns or cities to avoid the larger bulk of the zombie population and survive off the land and deal with the harsh reality of survival and relying on instincts of food gathering, shelter creating, and fish. A lot of us are pretty bummed in our country. Going out when the sun starts pouring down will be your only real avenue of scavenging for supplies, as down more bodies and mass effect style, causing zombies every time to enter the surroundings. If it isn't raining, just one not being hurt by a zombie just by the way slightest noise or sound. If you're lucky enough to find some spot, you'll unprotected and unbound by the level of dead, you'll possibly go down the road, surviving, and you will reward the rescue will have high. You'll also have to watch out for others that will infest your compound, seemingly any mammal will be affected and bring life. Actually, out more slowly. With the numbers reaching so much go as the worst possible outcome. When you have militaries looking to wipe out nests of zombies that there's no real cure for except death, it's very possible and probable that widespread napalm, nukes, or tactical explosive strikes will be used. Since zombies of this type are so attracted to noise, militaries would use flocks of drones to emit sound waves in specific hotbed locations to gather the largest number of undead possible in a condensed location in order to most effectively destroy the viral outbreaks at the heart, eradicating nearly all infected bodies and cleaning the virus off the face of the earth the best they can. And if you have camped out in this location and you are wondering why the fuck it got so loud suddenly, they're going to give you fair warning about the upcoming attack via a helicopter announcement. But good luck not getting bit or eaten alive as you panic to get out of wherever you've been hiding. If you cannot do that, you're going to be wiped out in nuclear hellfire. With those that do survive all of this, you're still going to have to be hunted by the army to either kill you or keep you in indefinite containment. If not for armed intervention, the infection will eventually reach you as the infected numbers tally up more and more, and the hammies begin to rise, indoctrinating people, and the more intelligent people and stronger people that go in their ranks, the more chance that they will create an army that cannot be defeated, making any notion of fighting back and surviving the best you can pale in comparison to their numbers and insane abilities. The only realistic way I see you surviving all of this is if you turn into a half-being yourself, and that all relies on your mental state, antibodies, and genetics. You gotta hit the genetic lottery, because only 4 characters and a few unnamed people and are removed to maintain into this chances. But even if you do become a hero, decide to live your life solitude, military organizations will eventually figure this out and try to make you wipe out the disease or seek to harvest it from the flesh to have this virus or to experiment on it to create biological warfare or to create super soldiers to dominate battles. security forces who desperately tried to contain the virus via lead, fire, or explosives. Or will you and bombs and amplified lead fear and ferocious appetite to continue your new state of existence? Or a powerful version that can substitute term your life? Take a report from all of this. Whether you're a person, or a sex, as it began to spread beyond its borders. A former pharmaceutical employee turned teacher for the local high school has his son being relentlessly bullied and picked on. After attempting to solve it diplomatically, which failed due to the negligence of the police and school, the father would take things into his own hands. Studying what is rarely seen in nature, he decided to attempt to apply this to his son with disastrous results, developing a virus specific to him to help him with his fear of being picked on and subsequently not fighting back. The virus would subdue his fear, but turn it into a blind rage and aggressive stance. This was not the desired outcome, as you might have imagined. So in today's episode, we're all going to talk about the virus and outcome. All of us are dead, which specifically pertains to the Jonas virus and the pathophysiology associated with some who are outright detrimentally infected without systems, and possibly how one person in particular was just outright immune. All I have to say is just this virus is going to require some change, because not only does the virus act like nothing that exists on the planet, but the body's response to the virus doesn't act anywhere close to how the human body actually deals with viruses. That said, it doesn't matter, because you can connect anything if you put more science enough, so it must be doing. So the first thing I want to say before getting this thing off is this is a TV show. Now, the joke I mentioned about how this could have just been an email, but I do feel like this would have been an excellent movie, because the big issue is, once you stretch it over 12 hours, because it was a TV series, you start getting a lot of redundancy in the plot. But then again, you know, I'm not a TV show critic, it's just what I saw. That being said, if you haven't seen the show and like zombies, hey man, it's worth a watch. I'll be covering the summary here, so obviously spoilers ahead of the actual plot of the show. Even with that though, if you want a more detailed breakdown of the plot and its episodes, check out Sausage Gaming's video reports, which should be either out before mine or shortly after. If you're collabing or anything, just avoid and do those videos. So using the timestamp up on screen, you can jump ahead to bypass the summary, but again, there has been spoilers in the science fiction stuff. So let's get into a super brief, or as brief as I can make it, because it's over 12 hours of content that I'm trying to condense down. Never done anything like this before, so let's give it the old college try and
school after the diplomatic way failed, but the bullies have continued to find him nonetheless. As they are sitting there just pretty much absolutely shrekking him, to Jinsu's credit, he does attempt to fight back for the most part, but he's losing the fight because, let's be honest, people who bully others never fight fair, which is why you go for the groin if you're outnumbered. But as Jinsu is launched off the roof, he hits the ground and is brought to the hospital where we are now, where his father comes to see him. Seeing as he's still turning, he ends up taking out his own son as he realizes this is his only option. That said, he still has got his mice back in high school where a girl named Yu is bitten and infected with the virus. She ends up getting held captive by the teacher as the virus takes over her body before eventually escaping a few days later. At this point, she is completely transformed into a zombie, or for the most part, and is infected, if you will. She's then brought to the infirmary of the school where she's held down as she begins to seem like she's convulsing, but really it's just going to her brain. This is where the nurse attempts to give her a shot to calm her. The nurse is then now bitten. Firefighters and paramedics arrive to take her out to the hospital and take off with her. As the nurse returns to her office, she begins to see the transformations take place. She ultimately exits her office and then begins attacking the students after two students found her and released her from that office. Also, there's one guy in the scene where the bullies are like picking on this guy and girl in the construction area. Again, if you're ever in that situation, just start swinging away. You punch somebody in the face hard enough, I bet you they stop bullying you. So, as the zombie outbreak is in full effect now at Hyosen High, childhood friends Onjo and Chang Sun end up escaping the cafeteria, but just barely. This is where things start creeping along. At this point, it becomes essentially a game of hide and seek with a ton of students attempting to escape and steal off classrooms before getting absolutely forgotten by those infected. As the group convenes in where they assume was one of the same classrooms, a teacher is actually infected, which forces them to flee once more for their presumed safety and head towards the empty sites. During the scuffle, however, Isaac becomes infected and then thrown out the window to protect the rest of the group, which ends up screwing Onjo. Meanwhile, back in the cafeteria, we meet the biggest douche in the universe, Rayman. He's hiding in the cafeteria, and man, if they ever needed to make a better character, hey, this guy checks like all the boxes because I absolutely love him. As all this is happening, the archer goes to back to high school to discover it's in the middle of a massive outbreak. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Young Song, Abem, and Jen, and by the way, I suck at pronunciation, so make fun of me, are competitive in the restroom. While all this is happening, the group is originally infected from the hamster and bit her is finally turned full zombie. She begins attacking other patients and medical staff in the hospital, leading to more vegetables breaking outside the confines of the school and slowly spreading to the campus. Realizing the group cannot stay just inside staff, the group decides that they will down to another level to find a more clear area. Using the fire hose, they tie a foot to the handholds and throw it down, which goes directly to the broadcasting room. As they descend down one by one, they end up finding a surviving teacher, Miss Parks, down there. Although, no time to celebrate, because as they talk about what's happening, the zombie ends up coming down the fire hose, and they are forced to fight it off as Young-soo is scratched on the wrist by a broom handle. Yan accuses him and belittles him, which causes an argument until he agrees to wait in the broadcasting room for an hour to prove he's not infected. The wager is that if he's not, Yan will apologize. However, that doesn't happen, as Yan basically comes in there after 30 minutes and continues to belittle him, and then uses blood from the broom handle to infect him, sealing his fate. However, Namra ended up seeing her do this, which causes the group to turn on Yan. So, she gets upsetty spaghetti over this and leaves voluntarily, although likely she would have been forced out. Miss Parks then scolds the rest of the group before going out to get her back. Bad move, Miss Parks. Let her perish out there, IMO. Due to Miss Parks' bad judge of character, she's then taken out later, as we learn. But back in the bathrooms, Mi-jin and Jun-soon are forced to take out Ha-lim's, and again, don't make fun of me, as she turns before being joined by the archery team's two survivors, Woo-jin's sister Hari and Min-jae. Back in the kitchen, Guai-nam escapes after basically sacrificing everyone in there. At this point, the military is called in as the virus continues to spread and attract the attention, which imposes martial law and the evacuation of the residents who are infected. At this point, Chang-sun's mother sees a broadcast and then heads to the school to get her son, while Onjo's father is at a government facility taking what's not safe. At this point, the creator of the virus is now arrested by Cheyenne and detected as Michael Chan begins recounting why he even did it in the first place. He says his son was absolutely beaten up by the police. You could tell his son had tried to fight back, but it clearly wasn't his nature. And I would say this, if you don't enjoy fighting, hey, you may even hate it, but if you don't like that, you don't have to fight as hard. You'll take your boxing course and self-defense moves. That way, you can end the fight before it becomes a long, drawn-out thing. Work smart, not hard. Anyways, as the detective listens to this, eventually, young John begins to kind of swallow over regret. He's good, as this was never his intention in the first place. He wanted his son to fight back, and realizing he spilled the spaghetti out of his pocket on this one, he tells the detective where the research is on his laptop back at the school. This detective then hears an alarm and exits the interrogation room with Byung-chan. The police station is then overrun as Byung-chan saves the detective, and then Jae-in is able to escape with his partner, Hong-chul. Man, there are a lot of freaking names in this show. Anyways, back at school, Soo-hyuk and Chang-sun go to get a working phone as the students are forced to turn theirs in during the day. They end up getting separated from one another as Soo-hyuk returns to the group alone, with Onjo rather dismayed over this, with Chang-sun hiding in the principal's room where he witnesses Wai-nam then take out the principal. As Wai-nam goes on to attack Chang-sun, they end up running through the infested school to the library. Also, the government officials are officially evacuated with Onjo's father. As the fight continues in the library, Chang-sun is able to get the upper hand on Wai-nam, though it doesn't look like it because, he's kind of being choked out, but he's able to blind Wai-nam in the left eye before throwing him down, where Wai-nam is then bitten several times and appears to be consumed. While this is happening, Wai-nam says that he's going to get revenge on Chang-sun. Oof. At this point, the rest of the group hatches a plan. Use the drone in the science lab to see the destruction and look for Chang-sun. Using the drone, one of the girls, Ji-min, sees her infected parents outside and attempts to off herself before getting stopped by the group. The archer team and the two in the bathroom decide that they need to head towards the training center to get more arrows and hunker down. Meanwhile, the police officers ironically take refuge in Chang-sun's fried chicken restaurant, where the girl from earlier, which I did never mention her, she just sort of has like a subplot, hid her baby and then tied herself up because she was infected. So now Guai-nam wakes up after being infected and all over. Apparently has survived the infection process with his brain still functional intact. The infection will ultimately have an effect on his consciousness. Waking up though, he continues to search for Chang-sun to see how he's been. Promises to use the drone to find Chang-sun and inform him to broadcast the film there. And then he needs to listen to the words and stay there. He'll be a giant nerd and run out of the infected baby to distract his own group outside the music room. While they end up leaving, Wai-nam heard the broadcast goes out of the room to murder Chang-sun. Then at the staircase, he encounters Soo-hyuk and stay behind and fight zombies. This is the Chang-sun attacks Nam-ra, then joins the fight and is bitten by Wai-nam before she and Soo-hyuk push him out the window. Like Wai-nam, Nam-ra does not immediately transform. Chang-sun, who earlier witnessed Wai-nam being bitten, argues for her to be taken out despite Soo-hyuk's insistence that Wai-nam was not a zombie when he bit Nam-ra. Nam-ra stays by the window though, ready to jump if she turns. Soo-hyuk then stays by her side. Nam-ra gradually enters a half-zombified state and has an urge to bite Soo-hyuk, but retains control over her. After they argue about the potential risk of Nam-ra's situation, the students use a camera to record their last words in case they don't make it out alive. Unknown to them, inside of the adjacent PTA room, which is well stocked with food and water, Young is alive, hiding from the zombies. The rest of the survivors then fight their way out into the training center, but Young essentially stabs his stomach. At the chicken restaurant, Jae-in and Onjo see a young girl in his bed from the preceding. So Joe then breaks out the quarantine zone and begins to pursue. Once again, so Drew is the one to swallow. So now you have with Nam-ra bitten, Soo-hyuk says, I love you very much, as they share each kiss. Nam-ra's infection, however, begins to display signs of heightened hearing, vision, and smell, which appears to be half of the state. Onjo postulates that she's immune, but not really, making their escape. The staircase is then lifted. Absolutely doesn't let them out as he's rescued by the helicopter that he's asked several times. Anybody else alive? No, nobody else is alive. sacrifices. Also to gain more subscribers, Jaik recommends him for unnecessarily putting himself in danger. But just then, O'Toole and the two children return to the kindergarten inside of the school bus. Jaik and Gibberish jump onto the top of the bus as it drives off. They make their way through Hyosin and pick up Min Ji, a seemingly uninfected Hyosin high school student, also an outcast and victim of Guinam's bullying. Unknown to them, Yun Ji is also in a half-zombified state. They are soon picked up by the military, and at the school during that night, the two different survivor groups bond separately. For the rest of survivors, Ha-Ri teaches Yi-Jin archery, and they talk about their futures. Rooftop survivors gather around a campfire, talk about their pets. Yan decides to bring the rooftop survivors on the roof after recalling mistakes. This is because Toad survives Sue's murder. Why not kill on seeing her and ambushes Toad's survivors as a fight breaks out on the roof. Why is wrecking everything. She grabs the son before Namra throws him off the roof. But that problem is solved by the time he goes down. Missions they say the course everyone wants their missions. Clean a big laptop and get all the other students, just as G took the aggressive and took out the coward on the roof. Which he deserved, not gonna lie. The commander tells the soldiers to remain behind the students, and as they question him, he then tells the soldier to fire. The soldier does, but up into the air, sparing them before reluctantly leaving the students behind. At this point, the whole plan has gone sideways, realizing that Yun-Ji is a half-turned zombie, and they have no idea how she got through. She must be asymptomatic. They then realize that they can't bring any more citizens in, so willingly, seeing as they really don't know how long the incubation period is, they halt any further evacuations until they can figure this out. However, through a stroke of luck, it begins to rain and thunder at the high school, giving everyone much-needed water and blocking the senses of the zombies. Namra and Guinam included. The group decides that this is their chance and attempts to leave the school. As both groups attempt to make their way to the mountains, Shang-Sun sees his mom has been infected, which causes a slight skirmish between the men of the group, as Shang-Sun attempts to defend his zombified mother. Well, this was not a good plan, as it attracts the attention of all the other zombies in the area, and the rooftop survivors flee. They become separated during the escape, with Namra, Suhyuk, and Anjo struggling to get the distraught Shang-Sun move, while the rest, led by Daisu, run through the woods. Hyo Hirong falls down, and Ji-Min, who is scared off by a nearby zombie, leaves her behind. As Ji-Min tries to follow the others, she gets lost and is taken out and escapes the wall. Meanwhile, Hirong is the rest of the Jin. He is reunited with Ha-Ri, as he did she led the rest of the survivors to the woods. Together, Shang-Sun's group and the rest of the survivors of Jin, Hirong, during the fall, reunites with Daisun's group, and they all gather in the school's room. Immediately after they enter the hall, announces zombies to the grass in the state. First, everyone should come to the room. During the horse attack, James escapes from the auditorium to the woods, and Shang-Xiang sacrifices himself to save Jin, who is eventually taken by the others into the school's room, where they take shelter. Just closed. The next day, the two different groups interact with each other. Confesses his actions to Ha-Ri. Now these two together as the wife is always called brother-in-law, and then meets on the part and she's not very impressed. Later, the survivors will pieces of women and the parts of the barricade to surround themselves in the making way. As they carry out the plan, attacks Jean Yong dies. Just as zombies are about to overwhelm the barricade of horses, Anjo sees her father finally reach the school inside. Meanwhile, military scientists analyze the data of young John's laptop and activates to predict the zombie epidemic nation. The military decides to press on force Yeltsin in order to prevent the virus from spreading to the country. So this whole time, Anjo has been terrified about losing her father, and as soon as she returns with him, he gets caught into this area of wolves. As the group retreats from the construction area, they are really close to the buildings to finish about, but Namra is really a Mr. Krabs, and she's flying to find her friends and meet. Not by not, then finds Jane, archery area, and at first, she starts to live, so he decides to return him. As Jane takes a few shots at Guinam, muscular contractions become too much, threw off his aim. As the group remains on the balcony, Namra hears an evacuation order as the military has found out that the zombies are attracted to specifically 24 megahertz on the sound spectrum and begin pulling zombies to different areas, one of those being Hyosin High School, as it's about to be concussively forced. Guinam now finds the group and immediately infects Shang-Sun, which results in a fight as the rest of the group makes their escape. Shang-Sun is able to push Guinam off the roof as he enters a final confrontation with this giant douche canoe. The military then moves in, as the group is able to escape the blast, sort of in the woods for the most part, but this results in the end of crucial young son and wife Nam, and also injures the leg of Dae-soo, which everything now is consumed in fire, basically concerning the zombies. The commander at this point calls up his wife after taking full responsibility for what he's done, and she yells at him apparently, and it appears as though this was the basically last reach out he was going to do, but after the horrors he had to commit, and then his wife yelling at him, it sort of seals the deal, and he eats some lead, with his wife texting him a few seconds later, apologizing for yelling at him, and asking him when he will be home. So now we get episode 12, which I didn't really understand why it had to be made, but let's wrap this thing up. The rest of the surviving group stayed out in the woods that night before heading to the neighboring town. They don't know if the infection has spread this far yet, but yes, it has. Now, to a degree anyways. The group is attacked once more after Nam-ra tells them to run, but they have injured, so they have to stay and fight. Woo-jin is bitten trying to save Ha-ri, which results in Nam-ra taking him out before he can infect others. Nam-ra is getting overwhelmed and starving at this point, so she lags behind to snack on a bandwidth as the others come to find her. She then abandons the group once they do, as the remaining 6 come into contact with the military group. We now flash forward 3 months. The government ends martial law in Yosen, but the residents must remain in quarantine as they don't know how long the incubation period still is. Onjo has been leaving the compound regularly and spots a fire on the school's rooftop. As the rest of the 6 survivors sneak out the next night with her, they go to see who lit the fire. It's Nam-ra, and she wants to spend time with her friends again. They tell her to come back with her to the quarantine area, but she refuses, saying that there are others like her in the area, and they have created like a type of society over there. Nam-ra tells the others that she will be back as she jumps off the 4th-story roof and takes off, leaving the others watching her as clearly she has evolved into something more than human. So with that wrapped up, I believe the first place we should start are the actual effects of the virus, and then move on to the immunity displayed within some of the people, but it appears to be more associated with the mental state than anything else, which I'll explain based on hormones released under certain pressures of the environment. Because isn't endocrinology a blast? Don't answer that, of course it is. So, the effects of this virus. The Jonas virus's original intention and creation was to mimic something that we see in nature occasionally by causing the body to undergo a similar physiological response to fear by basically having a predator on your tail. Whether that be an animal or just a tool from your class who needs his nose broken. Because a tool is a tool is a tool. In nature, it's rare, but Byung-chan is correct in his observational studies. Most prey does not turn on a predator to defend itself, choosing to flee most of times or just freeze. These exist because they were the most effective methods that allowed the animal to survive to go on to continue to spread its genes amongst the next generation. So effective is this strategy that it is the dominant form activated by their adrenal system. But, as we all know, there is another, and it is known as fight. Which, just for your information, there are actually 3 outcomes, as you might have guessed what I just said: fight, freeze, or flight. And there are different scenarios based on what you were witnessing. If something is actively attacking you right at that moment, your body will typically go into fight or flight. If injury sustained, it appears to be more in line with fight. If something is running after you, flight is activated as, who knows, you might be able to get away. That is, unless you have a tool in your hand that is capable of putting that thing down, but even then, you will feel the urge. And freeze happens a lot when you see something or notice an animal that may not have noticed you yet. That said, humans are loud and clumsy, so it most definitely has noticed you. These methods of survival are not necessarily unique to us as a species, but something to understand is we are predators in our own right. While we are not the biggest or strongest or have the sharpest claws, we are vastly superior in our intellect, which has helped us go from being regularly hunted by bigger animals to having everything on this planet essentially be at our mercy, because humanity is always going to be number 1. I don't care if anyone else doesn't basically agree. Homo sapiens FTW. Anyways, pro-human mentality aside, we see something a little different with prey animals. They absolutely have the ability to fight back. Like if you walked in the woods right now and tried to fist fight a deer, that thing can absolutely shrek you because you are trying to fight it in a way that your body wasn't really designed to do. Prey animals will typically run or freeze. Impalas in the savannah actually will go as far as leaving their young behind along with other herbivores that do the same thing to outrun predators, because that is the most successful method. Whereas fighting for a creature whose body is built on fleeing or freezing is not as effective. That's why it's so peculiar when you actually see prey fight back, because despite their evolution and genes telling them to run, it's almost like there's a short circuit in their brain to a degree. And while I doubt all fear is lost, it becomes an understanding of, I can't outrun it, I can't hide from it, all I can do is fight. And with that, all focus and energy is put into a last-ditch effort to save the animal's life. What's even stranger is, predators may not necessarily know what to do in this instance. This equates to human interaction as well. Like, you ever sock someone in the gut who's been messing with you? And I mean, like, I'm talking like you absolutely crumple them. Well, strangely, they usually don't fight back. Instead, they just kind of leave you alone after that, because at the end of the day, humans are animals too. I'm also required to say, after saying that sentence, I don't condone that. Anyhow, when prey fights back, predators may choose to run because the fight isn't worth it. And this is what
what Byung-chan wanted for his son, which is also why he told him to fight back in the first place. Because again, I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm also saying observational history says that it does work. Take that for what you will. The next question becomes, what exactly did Byung-chan harvest in the prey that fought back? So I just have to say something real quick, as mentioned way earlier. This whole set of events is fairly strange overall, because this is not how viruses work. They just work way too fast. This is also not how a body responds to an infection, but I think there may be a way to explain this despite the pathophysiology being literally all over the place. Byung-chan talks about how there was a hormone in rodents that would cause them to fight back. Now, it's easy to think, oh, this is just adrenaline, but really, adrenaline gears the body up physically for the actual fight, flight, or freeze by sending blood away from the organs and to the muscle, and it ensures movement and stamina will be there for whichever you choose to do. But with freeze, something else happens. The perception of time dilates. This is why people who are scared say time slowed down. You are literally perceiving things differently. And if I recall, it feels like it adds about an extra half second per second, which ends up adding up. This gives your brain the ability to work out what to do in the resulting freeze. Seeing as that's what adrenaline does to the meat suit, the next thing has to come into play. The rodent hormone causing it fight, which is why Byung-chan was attempting to do and eventually figured out how to successfully implement it into the human body. The concept came about likely at first just as injecting the hormone into the body of the sun. This, however, would not be effective because hormones don't just build up in your body. Otherwise, that would absolutely be useless as a messenger system. Hormones are required to eventually break down. So instead, he needed the help of a virus to implant RNA into the cells so the body would make it itself. But I would suggest it goes further than that. The virus would work like any other virus, carry the genetic coding associated with the hormone and how to build it. Upon injecting its contents into the cell of his son at a rapid rate all over his body, the cell would officially have access to building this hormone. However, something seems to have gone wrong, which I would likely trace back to the virus selected. While Byung-chan was attempting to go for a limiting response, only release if scared, which would have been the mRNA built up in the cell of a person, which the ribosomes would then use and then read to create the hormone, which if you didn't know, this is a biology channel. There are protein and there are lipid hormones, so now you know. I believe where things went awry with choosing the virus is once mRNA is translated and created into a protein, typically it's destroyed so it does not build up. However, with the zombies running around and infected, it's clear this hormone is not clearing from their system, and as a result, it must be sustaining itself within the cells, which may also explain how it's actually affecting cells later. Something to know about animals in our species. Longtime watchers will know I've mentioned this before, but for new people, roughly 8% of our genetic coding are a direct result of leftover material from ancient viruses. If you didn't know, specific viruses will just straight up encode themselves into your genes, which there is a hypothesis floating around out there that this is kind of may have what forced prokaryotes on the pathway to become eukaryotes, as the viruses infected and caused a cell to invade another cell, almost like it was a virus itself. Fairly interesting, but the point I'm making is that viruses will absolutely encode themselves into your DNA in certain events. Take the current virus. By all accounts, it does not appear to even go near your DNA, so that's a good thing to hear. But viruses containing reverse transcriptase integrase do. Take herpes, for instance. The reason it's such a little douche-canoe is that it actually integrates into your DNA and occasionally will just come back if that specific sequence is translated. That's why it's a lifelong disease for now, until we use CRISPR to wipe it from an infected person's body. But this is what I believe may be happening with the Jonas virus. Byung-chan should have been more careful in the selection of the virus of choice, because rather than keep it at an mRNA level outside of the nucleus, he instead may have inadvertently selected a virus that contains its own reverse transcriptase integrase, which means the hormone responsible for the lack of fear and complete aggression is integrated into the cellular DNA itself. With this being in the DNA of a person, this would have several effects in the body, and you can clearly see what these are, but the main one being they can't snap out of the mental state that they are in once the cell starts releasing this hormone, which may hint at why certain people react differently to their specific infection, but mostly across the board, they typically react the same. It would appear that your mental state is the determining factor when you are infected based on the hormones currently in your body at time of infection. Moving on to explain this, we must first understand what happens to your body upon your infection, which would be infected as the common in the population. First, the virus is screened. For instance, when it comes to knockdown dragon, call zombies are bleeding, mouth all over their eyes, and their nose and nose. Just as you may have seen when not young, infects got so infected by viruses before they came virus from those who are infected to those who are not, thus propagating the virus. Now, something to know about this virus, I'm saying virus a lot, is while it appears stable in outside environments, at least for a little while, it is hinted throughout the entire show that the virus is mutating to stay alive. It's also hinted at that the virus forces your cells to begin attacking the weaker cells, which, alright, it seems like something may have been lost in translation here, so let me see if I can explain what I believe the show is saying, because likely the native language is explaining it a lot better. First, let's start with the